Hello everyone, hope you had a great weekend. The warm-up started for us yesterday. We actually made it up to 75 degrees, which is pretty warm after last week. Felt pretty good, did some yard work. As I imagine most of you did. It is that time of the year. We're supposed to be in the 90s here the next several days and maybe through the end of the week, depending on whose forecast you believe. No moisture in the forecast, and these 90-degree temperatures that come with high winds is really bad for the wheat crop. Like we talked about last week, 55% of our crop is rated poor and 35% is rated fair, so you got 10% of our wheat crop is good or better, and that's not good. We normally bring in 400 million bushels. We'll be lucky to bring in 250 million bushels, and it will add to inflation, not so much domestically, but around the globe. Hard red winter wheat is people food. Governments have been toppled when the people don't eat. If you're poor and oppressed, but at least your belly's full, you tend not to pick up what you pick up to use against your overlords. If you're poor and oppressed and hungry and doesn't look to get any better, why not pick up something and go after them? So you can lose your government based on the price of wheat. And the most consistent long-term buyer, and we've subsidized their wheat purchases for years, is Egypt. And if the Muslim Brotherhood were in power, we'd probably do what was necessary to stabilize Egypt. With the Muslim Brotherhood kicked out of power, it's questionable what we're going to do. So anyway, it will add to the costs of inflation. And everywhere I turn around, I mean, just everything, people are marking prices up right now. So nobody really believes the Fed's take on inflation. I certainly don't. So what do we have today? We have absolutely no news. It's a very light news week. In fact, the biggest news event this week is going to be the FOMC minutes from last month. And people will be, again, trying to define when and if the Fed will actually begin to taper, to tighten, and by raising interest rates. And right now, one of the Fed governors is talking about the first quarter of 2015. Talk from Yellen and the others are maybe the last part of 2015. And some Fed governors have said 2016. So right now, what we're going to watch for is increased language or comments on sooner to raise interest rates rather than later. It's very difficult right now for the Fed just to come out and raise interest rates directly and often because of the $2.4 trillion that the large institutions have placed with the Fed. So not an easy situation to work yourself out of. No news to drive today trading. I think the direction of the E-mini is going to eventually give us the direction for this contract. If you look long-term on the F1 and on this particular screen, we're dealing with P's. So the long-term bias in this market is higher or a retest of the upper edge of the trading range, which is up here at 2604. We have a P on volume. We've got a B on TPOs, so we've got mixed. But what we can see right here is that this volume area down at 2518 is holding, and then we're at value right now at 25. So I see resistance at 28 to the buck, and then basically in the 4 area. I was tempted this morning to ride up 27 to 31. I raised it to 31 to 03, trying to get in at the upper edge of this, but it may take 27s to get in. A lot of it is just really dependent upon what the E-mini is going to do. On the buy side, we've got pretty good support starting at 24, so I put the buy in at 20 to 24, but if the E-mini rallies, that's too much to pay. If the E-mini sells, we can pay 25s and 26s and get in. So Second buy zones 13 to 17, as is off the case on Monday mornings. We just kind of have to sit around and finally let the market get us in once it's made up its mind which way it's going to go. So we're not playing with a lot of information this morning. We're not playing with much in the way of directional movement. So we're probably just going to have to feel it out as the session progresses. Sounds like Monday morning. Mondays are tough. People come in, they book their profits from last week. They have a longer term idea that carries over from the previous week. Didn't hear anything out of the Ukraine. Biggest news internationally that came out was China and Russia are very, very close to inking a 30-year deal on natural gas. And China goes around the world trying to secure energy sources, so that shouldn't surprise anybody. But rest assured, the long-term deals with India and with China that are in the offing, they won't put themselves in the position that Europe has, which is exactly the same position the United States has put themselves into with the space station with Russian. Can you imagine having to go to Russia to get them to launch your military satellites? How bad that hand has been played by our government. You know, oh, peace is broken out. You know, the Cold War is over. We're friends. Minor differences, but it's in everybody's best interest, right? I bet you the cost of using Russian launchers has just gone up by quite a bit as we've abrogated our role in space to the Russians, or at least the ability to get to space. The knob spread is holding up fairly well. It's not as high as it has been. We're back into the 1120 area, 1124. Seems to be a seller at 24 right now. Last week's high was 1122 before it pulled back to below 10. So the knob spread's still there. The long-term fundamentalist is playing from the long side. That hasn't changed. What do these people know that we don't know? So we've got value at 20. So our first sell is at least at value. Sell 1 is 20 to 24, and then sell 2 is going to be 28 to 138. I just don't think we got a lot of range. Looking at a lot of range today. The breakout down here came at 08. We're at 14, so we'll make 9 to 13 buy 1. Fairly aggressive, but the knob spread supports that. If the knob spread starts to come in, then we'll be able to buy cheaper. And then 1 to 5 for buy 2. Okay, gold was up this weekend, as was crude oil, so not everything is moving sideways. It's still in a trading range. I saw no news headlines out of the Ukraine over what happened with the deadlines that were given. I saw no new outbreak of fighting. It would have made some headlines. So my guess is that Russia has pulled their special force guys back a little bit. I think Russia's gotten just what they want, and they don't really want this to go any farther. And they're trying to figure out which set of thieves will be running the Ukraine now. So looking at gold, I still see a trading range primarily. There has been a seller in the 5 area. We left Friday's market wanting to sell 95, 97s, then basically 1302, and it's making our second area. So we'll make 1303.05, sell 1, and then we'll make let them get stops above the previous high. We'll make 9 to 11, sell 2. On the buy side, London's low is 5.95, so 95.97 will be buy one. And we'll make 90.92 buy two. Not a lot going on. Not an auction week. Nobody's saying a heck of a lot one way or the other. Just trading range with a sideways bias in gold. Definitely a seller above 10, definitely a buyer against 85. And I don't see any news that'll shake that up this morning. So we'll kind of open it up a little bit. We'll try to take prices at the outer edges. See if we can't make that work. Okay, Europe and Asian stock market sold. The United States stock market rallied up to 1875, primarily from option expiration. We'll talk about that in a bit. Dollar down one day, dollar up the next day. So we had a stronger dollar on Friday. It's time for the dollar to be down. So the yen and the euro are both up. A couple articles out over the weekend talking about how Draghi had to throw some red meat to the people out there to show people that the euro, he's serious about the euro moving lower. So the problem is that their charter, the charter of the European Central Bank, does not allow for them to own securities. Remember when it was 38.25 to 38.50? Well, we're a full point lower, so we got this 37.25 and then 37.50. So this 25 to 35 area will be 1, and then 45 to 55 will be 2. On the buy side, pretty good buying again below 90. So we'll make 137 plus or minus a nickel for buy one. And then buy two will make 75.85. I don't think anything can get going this morning in a big way in the euro. It is pointed up higher right now, so we'll play for it to move a little bit higher but not break out to the upside. Okay, crude was up. They did cite unrest in the Ukraine and Russia, and then they also mentioned concerns about supplies out of the Middle East. So they're kind of stretching to find a reason to explain why crude is higher. Some articles about why is gasoline so expensive in the United States. I'll tell you why gasoline is so expensive in the United States is that crude oil is holding $100. And when you look at the crack spreads and the rest of it, it's hard to have gas lower than 3 1/4 at today's crack spreads. So this is why gasoline is so high in the United States. And then they say, well, you know, with all the increased supply coming from Libya, Iran, Iraq, the United States, it should be lower. Well, riots in Libya as that government, you know, as democracy and freedom broke out in the Middle East. Now, how can you bring democracy and freedom to the Middle East that has no history of that? So they're fighting in Libya, and we're the ones that set that deal off. So the Libyan supply is in question, and that could be part of it too. We got volume at 102.50. Right now we're trading at 28. So this 102.50 area, plus or minus, will be sell 1, 103, sell 2. Got some volume there that can pull us up. On the buy side, we broke this out at 81, so we're currently at 28. Pretty aggressive, but we'll make 75 to 102 buy 1. And then 101 1/4, 101.50 for buy 2. I learned something this weekend. I had a fence replaced, and back in the old days they used coated nails 25, 30 years ago to make fences, and so after 10, 15 years you spend a lot of time re-screwing those boards or driving nails in that wouldn't stick. Now they use drivers, and they're done with nail guns, but they're ribbed. And so once a board is nailed to the 2x4 or whatever it's being nailed to, you don't get it out without breaking the board. I mean, so you really have to know what you're doing. It's not forgiving for a handyman. It requires doing it right the first time. And so that's a little bit of trivia right there. Okay, the E-mini. You know, on Friday we talked about the E-mini, and we had 55 to 60 as support and 75 to 80 as resistance, just based on where the option play was. And that's pretty much where we were. The market didn't quite make it down to 60. We had our buy in the 60-62 area. That worked out just fine. We were selling against 70. We had a 69 to 71 sell, and that worked well in the morning. L period, the market just took off to the upside and did trade up to 75. In the overnight session, that strength was there until the Asian markets opened and started to sell. So we're probably in the same situation. We probably have a seller here 75 to 80, and on the buy side we've got 60 to 65. And when you go look at the structure, that's where we are. Now, if we stay below this 80 area right here, you can see that we have pretty clean breaks, say starting at 77 to as high as what, maybe 82. If we can stay beneath this area and not get above it, then the market's got a good chance to sell. If we get back up above 75 and start trading higher, I mean, and as far as the broad big cap stocks go, the Dow and the S&P 500, there's no reason to think that it can't retest the recent highs at 98.5. Now, all is not good. The breadth is shrinking, and the worse a market gets underneath, the more the Dow becomes emphasized, and it's the easiest to mask what's going on. So we have the Russell, we have the NASDAQ, we have the smaller cap indexes selling, so we don't have broad-based buying as the market moves up. What we do have is merger and acquisition, and I've just seen it happen so many times that when companies have cash, they don't want to spend it on their own operations, but they've got to show growth of earnings per share. They take that money and they go out and buy other companies. And why do they have to show earnings per share growth? It's because of a tax change that was made in the 90s where income over $1 million for business executives is taxed. So everything is done on the performance of the stock. It's pretty short-sighted. It's why private companies like Cargill and Coke and when KKK and the rest of them take large companies private are in a much better position to get the long-term performance you need. So the broad companies out there use mergers and acquisition to beef up their earnings per share. It freezes the market. It holds it in a trading range because anybody that's got a stock that could be a viable buyout candidate won't sell it. They just sit on it. So this tends to yield a trading range until the market makes up its mind. So right now it's a 50 minus market and a 95 plus, and 22.5 takes us to 72.50, and that's right where we are. We're right in the middle of it. So failure to take out 75 I think represents a sell, so we're just going to make sell 1 75 plus or minus, sell 2 80 plus or minus. I basically see a trading range. We're going to make 65 67. This is probably the most aggressive trade that we have there, buying this, because we've got a volume number right here that should hold the market in 60 to 62. So my guess is the E-mini is going to settle the direction for other markets. All focus, all eyes will be on that until we get a direction out of the E-mini. 75 to 80 is resistance, 60 to 65 is support, and we'll play it that way. Any questions? Well, it's going to take about 15 minutes to get everything up and around and posted, so I'm going to get busy on that. I'll be back up as soon as I can.